Darren, it seemed like over the first 4 weeks or so, I think it was like 11 kick returns in the last 5 weeks. It's been like 4 or 5. Has that been a shift in strategy, or has that just been a matter of more balls getting kicked out of bounds?
I think it's a product of the success that Shaheed has had as a player, both as a receiver and as a punt returner. I think that if you look at kind of where the kickoffs have been landing against us more recently, there's not as many balls in the field of play, and there's not as many balls maybe near the goal line, if you will. So, I think in the first few weeks, people are always trying to kind of see what your design is, your scheme is, your returns are, all that kind of thing. And so I think, number one, we were a little bit more aggressive, and number two, I think teams were a little less aggressive with their kickoffs. Now, I think as people see that Shaheed's a dangerous player, I think there's some teams that are just saying, hey, we're gonna kick the ball 8-9 yards deep in the end zone, and not really take our chances and let him get a return off. So I think it's a little bit of both.
So, but yeah, it has been at least in large part because they're not kicking it to him.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, we've seen mostly touchback balls, if you will. There's kind of a game plan when you take the field on kickoff return. Hey, if this ball lands in a certain area, a certain place, hey, we're going to take a shot, or we're not, kind of thing. And I think we've gotten more knots than hots, if you will. So. Here's the thing about Ike's play that I love. 2 weeks in a row, I watch Ike in pregame, and these are kind of the little things that no one notices. He goes out there in Indy 2 weeks ago, and he's out there with Lou pregame, and it's kind of just his warm-up clothes, and Lou's warming up, and he's down there by the goal line fielding balls. And what happens in the game? He fields a ball inside the 5. This past week, again, I'm out there doing my pregame warm-up stuff. I look out, Ike's down there by the goal line fielding, going in punts with Lou and letting him hit the ground and playing the ball. And so, it's one of those things that it really doesn't happen by mistake. Here's a guy that's been working at it. And ever since Ike's walked in the door here, he's a very, very well-rounded special teams player. There's many things he can do, but he really works at his craft. This is not happening by accident. This is a guy that really watches film, studies his opponent, studies his situation. He's got a high football IQ, and I just love the fact that literally I looked out there last week and saw him in that exact same spot on the field, fielding those balls, and then what happens? Exact play in the game. He makes a great play to punch it out of bounds. And so, am I surprised? No, because I know the time and effort he's put into it, but it was a fantastic play, and it was a big deal because it really changes how teams play that when you're backed up in against your own goal line. Your play selection, all those things, they ended up punting in that drive. We got a return, we got a penalty, we had better field, and we kind of controlled the field position at the end of that game, and I think that was a big part of the turnovers, and the field position was a big part of why we won that game last week. So really, really kudos to Ike for a really great play.
With Blake, is it just kind of like a young player you got to ride the ups and downs a little bit, and you guys are confident that that'll get on the other side of it? Or?
I think it's a little bit like we talked last week, a little bit, like we talked about with Lou, is really kind of perspective. Yes, there's what you just said in terms of understand that's a young player going through his rookie season. I think just like I said last week with Lou, I think there's some things that Blake's done very, very well. There's 2 field goals in particular that I personally, the last one last week and then the short one he had against Houston are really kicks that we've got to make. The other ones are some longer kicks and some scenarios. But listen, he's done some things very, very well. Again, perspective, right? So you look at the first-year players in the league that are kickers. Ironically, just like Lou, there's 3 others as well. And if you kind of compare where he's at with those other guys, those other 3 guys were draft picks. He's not. So kudos to him on that as well. And he kind of stacks up with where those other guys are. Anytime I've been involved with a rookie kicker in particular, there's going to be some peaks and valleys. Like I said, I think the thing with him is we've got to get more consistent. The operation's got to be as consistent as possible with the snap kick hold, or hold kick rather, the battery. And so it's definitely a work in process, or progress rather. So it's a process with those guys. I think Blake is a very capable NFL kicker. We just got to get more consistent, like we talked about last week with Lou.
Was there something with the operation?
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every operation's been exact. We've been able to overcome that at times, and other times we haven't. But I think that Zach, Lou, Blake, they work constantly on that, and they've really, I think they've done a nice job. Has every operation been exactly the way we wanted it? No, it hasn't. And then sometimes you can see with the rotation of the ball, the way it comes out on some of those field goals, that's kind of the best tell. And so But all three guys have been working at it. And anytime you have a new battery like that, with a rookie holder, with a veteran snapper and a rookie kicker, it's not like you're just replacing one. It's really two parts of the three that have been new. And so that's, I don't think enough credit gets put in that, or enough onus gets put on that, if you will. But like I said, it's something that we've gotten a lot better at as time goes on here, and I have confidence we'll work through it.
Was there something on the operation on any of the misses this year?
Yeah, there was one. Yeah, there was one that I think that it wasn't exactly. Now again, if the kick is 45 yards instead of 47 yards, it goes in, so you're not even talking about it. But it's we end up hitting the upright, and so be it. So wasn't exactly the way we wanted it, but at the same time, if you ask Blake, he would tell you, I got to make that kick. It was down, it was there, it was I was good. It just wasn't really exact.
Darren, it's easy from the outside to lump in this latest kick with the one in Green Bay as like the two sort of pressure kicks, or,
sure,
game-winning, game-clinching scenarios. What do you have to judge from? Does it look like he handles those the same way? Does it look like he handles the aftermath of those the same? I mean, how
yeah, I think when we evaluate the whole thing, it's got to be the body of work. The one thing, I'm not a big social media guy. I'm not on any of that. I don't even know what they're called. The thing we got to be careful of is we live in this hero or GOAT world where there's like no in between. So one week he's the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. He's getting all this praise and he's the guy. The next week we miss a short kick and it's like the sky's falling. And we got to be careful. I'm the one telling him. I feel like I'm talking to my children. Stay off social media. No offense to you guys. You got to just stay the course, and because it's like an all or nothing world we're living in. So I got to look at when we evaluate the players, every player, you got to look at the body of work. His body of work since he's been here is a solid body of work. Are there, like I said, the end of the kick in Green Bay or the short field goal in Houston? The game kicks that we want back and got to get better at, yes, but everything points to that this player is a very good player, and there's no question he's got to get more consistent. There's no question, like everybody, there's things he's got to work on. There's no question there's been some pressure kicks, but last week's game is a great example. He hits a 55-yarder with probably 10 to 12 yards left on it, walks off the field with all kinds of confidence, and he's feeling great about himself, and everybody's feeling great about him. And then all of a sudden we hit the upright on a 47-yarder, and all of a sudden, it's the sky's falling again. So we got to be careful not to have the emotional roller coaster. I think it's very important that position, maybe more than anybody, because every play is dissected. And so, listen, if you look through the league, there are some very, very good kickers that have some misses. That's just the way it is. I don't think that the Baltimore people are talking about getting rid of Justin Tucker. He's missed 4 kicks. So it's a little bit of a microcosm of the world we're living in. It's like everything is do or die. So we got to be careful that we're not riding the wave. We're staying the course. We're kind of staying consistent with our process. And for a young kid, it could be a little bit more difficult than it can be for maybe an older veteran guy that's going through a rough patch because he's just getting started. I think DA mentioned that there's been many, many kickers throughout the league that have had some rough starts that teams move on from and they go elsewhere and they become Pro Bowlers. Daniel Carlson is one that comes to mind. Younghoe Koo is a guy that comes to mind. Younghoe Koo started his career 3 for 6. He got cut by the Chargers. He just made his 9th game winner for the Falcons. Daniel Carlson starts his career for the Vikings 1 for 4. He gets cut. He goes on. He becomes an All-Pro and a Pro Bowl kicker for the Raiders. So it kind of goes back to Nick's point. You have to kind of weather the rough patches and know that what you have in the player, or do you overreact? So there's a fine line because they do affect everyone in the building. I know we get that. So
well, let me ask you this: what you have in the player being the most important part of this expression. What gives you the confidence that you have the right guy to start with? To ride the wave.
Well, I think the body of work is what he's shown. I think this is a guy. He started off the year 11 for 12. All right. Well, we're 7 for our last 11. That's not acceptable. That's got to be better. All right. So, but we still had that 11 for 12 guy. We had the guy that made his kicks in the pre. We've seen the leg strength. We've seen all the things that work. And so, in my professional opinion, we got a guy here that's an NFL kicker. And the consistency thing has got to be the thing we get better at the most. We can't have the peaks and valleys.
So, talking about the body of work, is there such thing as like a clutch kicker, or is it just kind of like if you're a guy that makes your kicks, you're going to make your kicks? Is there a difference in?
Listen, I think the opportunities present themselves as far as clutch kicks. I'm a believer. This is me. I'm a believer. I think that's a little bit of the 55-yarder was a clutch kick because it was at the time we took the lead, so that was a clutch kick. But so we just defining clutch kicks as the last 4 minutes of the game, or we're defining the game situation, all that. So, so the 55-yarder hit a game winner in the preseason, all those things. So I think we've had enough of those opportunities where the 2 kicks in New England, outdoors, 50-plus yarders, tough stadium, those are big kicks. So, it's like I'm not a big believer in the how maybe the clutch kick is defined, but I think every kick, every play, and every time we go out there, the field goal team, the PAT team, is that you have an opportunity to put points on the board. So they're all important.
Given his background,
Yep.
is Lou's style of punting somewhat different than the norm in the NFL? And if so, do you try and adapt your coverage to his style rather than trying to turn it into a conventional?
Yeah. So it's really interesting, the kind of the trend you're seeing more and more of these rugby Australian type punters, be much more prevalent. I think I saw a stat the other day. I think in the SEC, all but 2 of the punters are Australian. So you're seeing a wave of Australian punters and rugby style punters. You look in our league, Wisnowski from the Niners, Dixon from Seattle, the lefty from the Giants. His name escapes me at the moment. All these guys are rugby style guys, and so just like any player, Les, I think what you do is you try to adapt their strengths, and you try to adapt your punt coverage, protection, scheme, game plan around what they do the best. And whether that's a directional punter, whether that's a rugby punter, whether that's a traditional guy. And so with Lou, I think what we're trying to do here throughout this season is we're trying to use his strengths and to the best of our ability. Like I said last week, there's some things he's really doing well. Limited coverage, return yards, getting a lot of balls inside the 20, locating the ball. So we're trying to kind of use his strengths and not trying to turn him into a guy that he's not. I think that's important with any player. Same thing with with all the guys. And so just like anybody else, I think he does some things really well. And we're just trying to accentuate those.
It's Jamie Gillen, by the way.
Jamie Gillen, thank you.
Sorry,
Jamie. No offense.
That so you could kick a 60-yard punt, it gets returned 12 yards. You could kick a 48-yard punt, doesn't get returned at all. Would you prefer the 48-yarder because with no return they can't?
Yeah,
is that the idea?
Yeah, listen. I mean, at some point, you keep firing you keep firing them in the middle of the field. You're gonna get one back at you so it's limiting the opportunities. I've said last week there's some things that Lou's got to get better at. I think I'd like our net punting to be a little bit better than it is. I really want it to be north of 41 yards. Really, when you look at the overall picture, we're creeping towards that number, and there's some balls that we missed there. But he's also done some things very, very well. But yes, there's a bunch of different ways to get to that net 41-yard net average. 41-yard punts, or 60-yard punts with a 19-yard return. The end result's still the same. That's why I always say the net punting number is really the number that we're concentrating on the most.
Thanks, Darren.
Appreciate you guys.